Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I have my new bestie here with me, Angelique Liles. Angelique and I have connected in a couple of ways. Number one, she is a go-giver. Hi, Bob and Kathy and everybody else. Thank you. Number two, she is an author, and she actually has, I don't know if she even knows this, I have a hashtag on LinkedIn called Bob Recommends. And whenever Bob raves about a book, I add the hashtag to that post so that later I can go back and find it. So Angelique was actually my very first Bob Recommends hashtag. So Angelique, tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the meat of stick figure leadership.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's always so fun to connect with fellow go-givers and to just get to visit and have a conversation. But my name is Angelique Liles. I am an executive coach. I tend to focus more on the leadership development and team dynamics side of that. That's just kind of always been my favorite thing to do. I spent over 18 years with a Fortune 200 insurance carrier. And the majority of those years were spent in some type of leadership role. And so in 2021, I actually retired from that career and started my own coaching practice, Aspire Professional Development. And I have been doing that since. So that's me. I live in Lubbock, Texas with my husband and our two dogs, and wrote Stick Figure Leadership.
I love it. And fun fact, Angelique was telling me that Lubbock is the home of Buddy Holly, one of my favorites. I have old taste, but you can't beat that guy. Yeah, airline safety should have been a thing back then, but
it was an unfortunate loss to the world.
Yeah, and the Big Bopper too. But for me, it was Buddy Holly. The movie still gets me, even though I know how it ends. It's like, damn it, the plane still went down. So
not changing.
I hope for a different ending. I'm an optimist. Now, let's talk about stick figure leadership for a minute, because first of all, I am fascinated by stick figures. I don't know what it is. I think it's that cave people mentality. But how did you, as I'm sorry, but if you worked at a Fortune 200, you were probably very corporate and you learned all the corporate speak. How did you come to the world of stick figures from corporate America? Because those two don't seem naturally side by side to me.
Well, my origin story is pretty unique, I will confess, but it started actually in Kenya. So I went to Kenya 13 times, Uganda twice. I worked with some local missionaries there and really just kind of developed relationships. And so in the process of that, got asked to do some leadership development in Malindi, Kenya, which is right on the coast, so East Africa. And the missionary was taking me, and he initially told me that it was going to be just a very small group of people that I had met previously, I had established relationships with, we maintained communication throughout the year, through Facebook and WhatsApp. I was so comfortable. I thought, oh, this is easy. We're just going to do a little roundtable discussion. He said maybe an hour. In the car on the way there, he tells me, oh, by the way, like that's, and anytime he would say, oh, by the way, like I immediately knew I was in trouble.
Like, uh-oh, what's coming now?
No, I mean, there's some other stories that go along with this, but I was just like, I am so in trouble. But he said, oh, by the way, word got out, and actually this has now grown into, I think there's going to be about 40 people there. Some of them have traveled to get there, so we want to make sure we feed them. They're going to kind of they're going to kill the goat for lunch, and which is a big deal. And he said, so really, if you could kind of stretch this out to about 4 hours. This is in the car on the way there. And I am not great at, I would love to tell you I'm the person that can pivot. I panic. I don't pivot, I panic. So I was sitting in the car and I thought, I don't have a laptop. I don't have any materials. Like I just have, my experiences. I have what I thought we were going to talk about. And I really panicked. And when I walked into the facility and we had this room and it was a great setup, but there's nothing there except at the very front, there is a whiteboard. It's not even a big whiteboard, and one dry erase marker that was questionable. It was a very questionable dry erase marker. And I just like shot up a prayer. I'm a person of faith, and I was like, God, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And it was like an instant answer. It was like, you're going to need to draw it out.
Yeah.
Leadership isn't about all your presentation materials. It's about transferable concepts. And you're going to have to draw it out. Because the other thing is, English was a second language for them. So even just in that's really the origin story. The stick figures are because I can't draw. Like, honestly, like my artistic abilities really stopped evolving at about the age of 5. So that is how the stick figures came about.
Well, for what it's worth, I deeply respect somebody who can communicate in stick figures. So this is a very weird and random thing, but I have 3 people I look to in that world. So I think it was Gar Reynolds wrote Presentation Zen. Mike Rhodes wrote a book about sketch notes. And then Russell Brunson uses stick figures in his books, whether it's Expert Secrets or so on. And I've always been, so for what it's worth, Angelique, I wish I had your stick figure skills.
Well, my original stick figures, I think I've shared some of those on LinkedIn. People are still like, but that is the only way. It really became almost like a challenge for me. Is like, how can I take a concept? Okay, how can I draw this out in stick figures to make it transferable, to make it easy to remember, and something then that somebody else can then turn around and transfer. So that's really where the origin story came from. And that was the start of stick figure leadership.
For what it's worth, reading your book, and I did love your book, I could feel that pain, the anxiety, the holy, I've had those moments where, what do you mean my bags got lost in my presentation? And, my laptop's not charging. And it's like, well, I can either cancel or let's lean in and see what it, but one of the things I'm going to guess, and I want to hear your version of it, by using those basic little pictures, I'm going to guess that audience connected with you at a level nobody else had ever had, because there was always you and the slides, whereas this was you as a tribe telling a story over a dodgy marker.
Yeah, it really did help, not just with the communication piece, but I do think with the connection piece as well. And being able to understand. And so I think that that's the other side of this that I don't necessarily talk about in the book, but more than happy to talk about now, is just even coming in with a lot of cultural assumptions.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, that all happened in Kenya, and just really having to reevaluate, oh, I'm coming in thinking Western leadership, and leadership means something different here. And so just really having to put a check in my way of thinking, be willing to learn and understand, and then being able to adapt my stick figures to their form of leadership, and then be able to explain it. But then I took that and brought it back to America. And I was like, okay, so Western leadership, here's some things we can learn.
Yeah.
So it's actually been such a learning journey for me. Even in writing the book was a learning journey.
Well, and I feel what I'm hearing, and I think this is one of my biases, so maybe I'm seeing it. I believe connection first, then communication. And what I'm feeling from you is that you connected deeply with your content that maybe you wouldn't have been forced to do had you not had the, oh, by the way, surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. It really forced me to strip down leadership and what I believed to be true about leadership. And it forced me to kind of look, I always talk about my North Star from a professional standpoint, but really it's a personal standpoint as well. And that's, you'll hear me say this mantra all the time: people matter. because people matter, leadership matters. And I believe that to my core. And so making those connections with people, making sure that um, they understand that that relationship is important to me and that communication is important. So then that builds out the framework for being able to move forward and get clarity, have consistency, build processes, you know, all the things that are involved with leadership and ultimately execute. So,
I love that. And I think in this day and age, as we hear some doom and gloom and, there's layoffs, I think we've spent too much time as a society thinking about management, and we've completely lost the importance of leadership. And once upon a time, those two things were synonymous. If you had a good leader, they were probably managing. But I think we've lost that professional leadership training where a lot of organizations focus more on my distinction is management is more the what and the how, whereas leadership is more about the who and the why. Am I close?
yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And that's actually the first stick figure in the book is just kind of drawing that out. I view management as being a very linear process, you know, so in the book, you see an arrow, and on one side of the arrow, you've got the
Right.
task, and on the other side of the arrow, it's result. And look, we need managers. Managers
Yeah.
get things done. They're the catalyst. They're the sense of urgency. I agree with you, though, that I think that we have a lot of times people are like, oh, you know, this is what I'm doing to build leadership, but they're talking about results and leadership. And the way I draw this out, you have, yes, you have an arrow, but it has a bunch of squiggles and there's nothing straight about that arrow.
Yeah.
And I'm using the term arrow very loosely. But on one side, you've got people, and on the other side, you have growth. And that to me is the distinction between the two. Uh, again, we need both,
Yeah.
but leadership is also going to have a time component in it. And I think that that might feed into what you were talking about losing kind of that distinction between the two is, you know, we live in a very fast food environment, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
We want results. We want people to develop. We want to see change now.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is going to sound odd, but like you can't microwave people. Like it doesn't work that way. And, so,
And you shouldn't try.
and you shouldn't try. But when you think of all of those like squiggles and challenges in that leadership arrow, those are people's learning styles. Those are people's perspectives, their bias, whether they're unconscious or conscious. It's their communication styles, their strengths, their weaknesses, their experiences that have now filtered all of those things. And so that takes time. So leadership is always going to be something I think that is going to be such an ongoing process. And that's another kind of fact or belief that I'm willing to die on that hill. Like it is an ongoing process. You never have arrived. But
Well,
it
and
doesn't take
honestly,
away.
I think the reason it's so underappreciated is I can't put it in my quarterly report and say, Angelique is 13% ready. There's no, because again, we don't deal with a standard person, we deal with people. And the very nature of humans is they're messy and they're chaotic, and would we want it any other way? Except at work we want them to be cookie cutter, and it's like, when did that ever exist, let alone work?
Yeah. Well, and I would even push back on that. Like, you don't want cookie cutter, because when you do that, you're missing out on different perspectives, different ideas, different like thoughts. Like you have thought leaders that will come in. I tease, we're still friends to this day, but I used to have an agent that he was like the 2-year-old that was constantly saying, why? And I was like, oh my gosh, just because I said so, it's like I didn't really say that, but you kind
You
of
wanted
wanted
to.
to.
Let's be real.
You wanted to. But what I learned was that his way of looking at things, he almost reverse engineered everything. And so once I appreciated that that was how he viewed things, and that's why he needed to understand the why behind it, what an asset to my team. I actually started running things by him because I'm like, what am I missing? Because he had such a different perspective and a different way of even just viewing things.
And I think that's the piece, if we look at modern education, it was created to train factory workers where you wanted cookie cutter because it was the process they had to follow. Now, in this age, we're knowledge workers. No two knowledge workers have the exact same skill set or, quite frankly, personality. It's the variables that make it interesting.
I would agree. I would agree 1,000%. And you kind of need that diversity in terms of personalities within your group. So yes, leadership is messy because people can be messy, but that's really where the magic happens. That's where you get these balanced teams. That's where you get this, you know, using an ancient term, the yin and the yang, right? Where you have
Yeah.
two opposites working together. And so I think all of that is just when you look from a team dynamic standpoint, if everyone can appreciate their differences and what they bring to the table, I think that that's when we can start channeling all of that to the common goal. And I talk a little bit about that in the book too, is just, I do believe like that common goal is like the great equalizer of everything. So you want diversity, you want the different perspectives and thought patterns and personalities, but how can we channel that to then execute on the common goal?
I love that. And for what it's worth, one of my favorite diagrams in the book is the herding cats, because I use that all the time. But I think that's the difference between management and leadership, in my view, is managers will actively try to herd those cats, whereas a leader is going to put the milk down and say, hey, everybody.
Yeah. What is your goal for this? And I think that that's part of leadership as well, is really understanding it's not about what you want to develop in the person. It's also about where do they want to go? And,
Yeah.
plot twist, they may not want to stay with you forever. And you kind of
Yeah.
have to be okay with that and just be like, okay, well, while you're with me, how can I help you grow? How can I help you develop so that you can spread your wings and fly and do XYZ or whatever is your ultimate dream? And not seeing that as a threat, but just seeing that as an opportunity to make an impact and to influence somebody's life as they spend time with you.
I love that. And I think one of the things I'm seeing a lot, I have two audiences. I love the solopreneurs and the startups. And then there's the big corporate ones. And it's interesting because it seems a lot of the corporate ones have more time for this sort of thing. Whereas I would argue that some of the smaller ones have more need for it because they're busy getting the thing done. They're not thinking about how do I meet my goals and then, oh, how do I help my staff? It's usually about how do we meet this month's deadline?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's really kind of what that herding cats really became about. Is I I worked in a 100% performance-based commission environment for 20 years, and when I first stepped into that district manager role, I had a quota, and I had agents that did not have a quota. So it became about like, oh, I have numbers I am going to be held accountable to hit, but I can't actually hold my agents accountable. We were all 1099, like we're all
Yeah.
self-employed. And so that was really when I learned about, okay, it has to be important to them.
Yeah.
So then it became about how can I help you be successful? And in the process of helping you be successful, this is going to help me be successful. And I think Zig Ziglar is the one that said that best, like help enough people. I'm going to butcher the quote, so I'm not even going to try it, but he said it. It was great. Look it
It
up.
was great.
Look
Yeah,
it
they can all
up.
Google it, and I agree wholeheartedly. And yes, I always trip on it, but really, truly, if you help other people meet their goals, they
Mhm.
will help you meet yours. I mean, it's literally go giver was in your DNA before you had the description of it. So
Yeah, it was such a fun time. I genuinely enjoyed that, and that's what I enjoy about the coaching aspect that I do now, is helping people or uncover their strengths, uncover what their intrinsic motivation is, their why, um, and then walking alongside them, partnering with them to just say, okay, well, here's how we're going to help you get there. And it's such a fun journey to take with people.
I
It
love that.
really
Now
is.
let's get really practical. So, what is
Mhm.
it like to work with you? First of all, who works with you, and then what is it like to work with you? Because I think that's good for our listeners.
Okay, sure. You know, I I love working with I'll work with just about anybody, but I love working with, particularly, I would say my audience is that manager who just got promoted into a leadership role, and they're like, "Huh, now what? Like, what do I do with this?" Because they just kind of have that, all of a sudden, that responsibility, that burden, and they think they know what it means to lead, but actually they know what it means to manage, and they need help with the leadership side of it. Um, a great example of this, my daughter-in-law is a physical therapist, spent years in school, and she'll say, I'm managing a clinic. And so now it's really more about people, but I was never, not one of those classes that she took in her,
Nope.
50,000 years of school to become a doctor prepared her for the people side of things. And so that would be the other person that I work with, somebody that has found themselves by default almost into where they are leading people. And those are typically the people that I work with. I also love working with teams. I am fascinated with team dynamics. And one of the tools that I use is, of course, Clifton Strengths. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach. And so just helping people uncover their strengths. And then from a team perspective, seeing how those strengths play into each other. And then figuring out, again, how do we reach the goal using these strengths and using the team dynamic strengths? That's probably the other person that works with me.
I love that. And for what it's worth, I look at that a lot because I think it's the Peter principle where we rise to our level of incompetence. And I used to take offense to that phrase, but the reality is the more technically good you are at a thing, as you rise, you have to learn how to manage people too. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people cap out because they've mastered the thing, but they haven't learned the people side of it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that we see this a lot. I mean, not just in the company that I worked with before, but I was fully promoted based on my results. And I think the idea was that, and I think a lot of companies feel this way, like, oh, this is a great producer. They obviously know what they're doing. We're going to put her in a leadership position, and then she will create other strong
Yeah.
producers. And in theory, that should work. It doesn't, because there are so many aspects that just aren't transferable. And so, you know, soft skills, like hard skills, are transferable, like processes, procedures, things like that. Um, but you've got soft skills, and there are so many people that you can look at and you're like, they're amazing. And you see what they do, and they're just charismatic, and they're, galvanizers, and they're all these things, right? I mean, people flock to them. But maybe I'm not that person. Maybe I don't have that soft skill. And so trying to walk into that and trying to mimic that, that is, I think, the worst thing that you can do, because all that happens is you come across as being inauthentic and probably will fall flat on your face. And so I just think that you have to be able to figure out, what does this person have as a strength? How can I help them grow and develop their strength? using their personalities, their perspectives, their communication styles to be able to accomplish X, Y, and Z.
I love that. And, I'll point to most professional sports. You can be really good at what you do. Doesn't mean you're a good team member. And it definitely doesn't mean you're a leader. And I think some of the rock stars, the worst thing we can do is give them a people role when they just want to be a production role.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that as well. And certainly I've seen that with other people, even in my career. Now, I didn't plan on being a leader. I talk about that in the book. I mean, that was never my goal. When the opportunity came, I was like, sure. I mean, I like
Why
people.
not?
Why not? I mean, this is horrible. And that is honestly part of the book. I hope you took that. I was very, very transparent.
Yeah.
And with my failures.
Yeah. Well, honestly, so for what it's worth, as I read your book, I could feel the highs and lows. I don't trust somebody who shows up and says, I showed up on the job, first day I was perfect. I don't believe you. And worse, I don't believe that you know why you succeeded because you believe it was natural talent. Whereas what I could feel from you was you tried something, the things that didn't work, you did less of, and the things that worked, you went, let's do more of that. And I really felt that we discovered the method with you in the book. So I want to highlight that because to me, that is the greatest thing an author can do is take us on the journey of discovery with them. And you did that very well.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it brought some value. But it really and truly was, this did not work at all. And I am failing miserably in this area. But it created this sense of reflection. And that's also like in the book where I try and do these end of chapter reflection questions, because those are things that I did. But when you reflect on something, it helps you not be reactionary the next time. And I think that there is a lot of power in that, and just it increases awareness. To your point, don't do this again. Do more of this next time.
Yeah. And honestly, my favorite people have fallen flat on their face many times. They get up, shake the dust off, and go, "Well, that happened. Let's learn from it and move on." And I really experienced that reading the book with you, so I want to thank you for that.
Good. No, you're very welcome.
Awesome. Now we're going to run out of time. I want to be mindful. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about what you do, and figure out how they can either collaborate with you, hire you, work with you? Where's a good place to find you?
Absolutely. I mean, I am definitely on LinkedIn, and it's just Angelique Liles dash Aspire. So they can find me on LinkedIn there. And then also I have a website, and it's aspirelubbock, LUBBOCK.com. And those are probably the two easiest places to find me.
Awesome. Well, as a go-giver one to another, first of all, I want to say thank you to Bob and his entire amazing community. But thank you for hanging out with me and sharing a little bit of your light with my universe. So thank you, Angelique.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.